All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're exploring the absolute high-stakes game of turning a legendary Japanese domestic market icon, a JDM, into a street-legal American masterpiece. You know, for decades, car enthusiasts have looked across the Pacific at this forbidden fruit. We're talking about those ultra-rare, performance-tuned machines and pristine, ultra-low custom vans cruising the streets of Japan. You've seen them in movies, video games, magazines, right? But actually getting them onto domestic tarmac? Man, that has always seemed like a total impossibility. Well, not anymore. We're going to break down exactly how savvy enthusiasts and investors are navigating a very specific regulatory gauntlet to bring these vehicles home. So grab a seat because we're getting into the meticulous math behind automotive gold.
Take a look at this quote. Most collectors lose thousands because they don't understand the hidden metrics between Tokyo's auction floors and the US market. It hits the nail on the head. We're pulling back the curtain on this grueling import process today because, frankly, unprepared buyers constantly lose money. It happens all the time. They see a shiny car at an overseas auction, they throw down a winning bid, and then they get absolutely crushed by red tape. They end up paying these crazy storage fees at ports, or worse, they literally have their newly purchased dream car seized. Why? Because they missed the precise valuation bridge and the strict engineering compliance required for these high-end customs. It's not just about buying a car, it's about successfully translating an overseas commodity into a stateside gem without getting wiped out by customs logistics.
Which brings us to the absolute core of today's explainer. What if a 25-year rule was actually your greatest financial advantage? This single question is the foundation of a meticulously calculated strategy. See, we aren't just talking about buying a cool old car to drive on the weekends and show off at local meets. No way. We're talking about a strategy that literally turns a standard shipping container into a lucrative, legally compliant investment vehicle. Once you wrap your head around the deep mechanics behind this rule, you completely stop looking at old cars as depreciating liabilities. Instead, you start seeing them as heavily restricted assets, standing right at the threshold, just waiting to have their floodgates open to a ravenous buyer pool.
So, here's our playbook for today. First, we'll look at the high-stakes import game. Second, we'll break down that 25-year regulatory loophole. Third, we'll see how to bridge the valuation gap. And finally, number 4, we'll explore the mobile asset advantage.
All right, kicking things off with part 1, the high-stakes import game.
Historically, bringing those pristine custom vans and legendary performance-tuned icons into the U.S. has been a landscape just fraught with seized assets, crushed cars, and shattered dreams. I mean, the U.S. government does not play around when it comes to what's allowed on public roads. Under standard regulations, importing a car that wasn't originally built to meet Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards, or FMVSS, along with strict EPA emission standards, is nearly impossible, or at the very least, it's prohibitively expensive for a private individual. To do it the standard way, you'd have to pay for independent crash testing, extensive emissions retrofitting, mounds of federal paperwork. You'd effectively double or triple the cost of the car. But then, there's the loophole. A specific age-based federal exemption strips away that massive mountain of red tape, bypassing the FMVSS and EPA barricades entirely.
That leads us right into part 2, the 25-year regulatory loophole.
So, where is this ultimate financial advantage actually forged? Well, it all comes down to the number 25. This is the golden rule of JDM imports. Once a foreign vehicle reaches 25 years of age, and you've really got to pay attention to this detail, it is to the exact month of manufacture. It becomes fully exempt from all federal safety regulations dictated by the NHTSA. This exactness is absolutely crucial. You literally have to check the factory build plates. Let's say a car rolled off the assembly line in Tokyo in August of 1999. It is completely untouchable by standard import methods until August 1st, 2024. Try to bring it into a U.S. port in July, it's going to get held at customs, impounded, or in extreme cases, crushed. No joke. But hit that 25-year mark perfectly, suddenly those strict federal safety standards that block newer foreign cars just evaporate into thin air.
But wait, there's actually a second layer to this timeline, 21 years. While the NHTSA controls safety, the EPA controls emissions, and the EPA operates on its own slightly shorter timeline. Vehicles that are 21 years or older in their original unmodified engine configuration are granted a full exemption from EPA emissions requirements. Now, the unmodified part is key here. If the car comes with a massive aftermarket turbo or a non-compliant exhaust system, you might have to revert it to stock to clear this hurdle. But mechanically speaking, because 25 is obviously greater than 21, once you hit that 25-year safety exemption, you've automatically cleared the 21-year emissions hurdle as well. This dual-layered exemption is literally the master key that unlocks the entire U.S. market for these vehicles.
Okay, moving on to part 3, bridging the valuation gap. Knowing the law is really only half the battle, right? We need to see how these specific exemptions allow savvy buyers to identify undervalued vehicles overseas and calculate precise valuation metrics. We're talking about absolute legendary JDM cars here. The Nissan Skyline GTR, specific highly tuned trims of the Mazda RX-7, and the right-hand drive Toyota Supra. The crucial metric to understand, they were never officially sold in North America in these configurations. Because of that historical lockout, fueled by years of appearances in video games like Gran Turismo and huge global movie franchises, there is massive pent-up enthusiast demand in the States. So acquiring these cars overseas, right at the 25-year mark, capitalizes on extreme scarcity. You're basically buying a depreciated asset in a market where it's relatively common, just before it crosses an invisible timeline and gains legal access to a market where it's incredibly rare, completely legal, and highly desired.
This precise journey breaks down into 3 distinct steps. Step 1 is navigating the hidden metrics of the Tokyo auction floors. This means translating complex Japanese auction grading sheets, verifying that crucial exact month of manufacture, and securing the vehicle against a pool of global bidders. Step 2 is engineering compliance. Even with federal exemptions in hand, it's a game of millimeters. You still need perfect customs declarations, homeland security paperwork, and sometimes minor engineering tweaks just to get the vehicle safely processed and titled at the state level. Things like swapping in DOT-approved headlights or putting on compliant tires. Finally, Step 3 brings us to the high-end U.S. collector market. By successfully navigating the auction floors and the logistical compliance, you've effectively built a bridge. You're translating secret auction valuations in Japan directly into a premium price tag for enthusiastic American collectors who just want a turnkey classic.
Which brings us to our final section, Part 4, the mobile asset advantage.
We've talked about the rules and we've talked about the process. Now, let's examine how this entire thing translates into a massive, tangible payoff. This is what we call a mobile asset. Basically, a highly sought-after vehicle that, through legal U.S. market access and high demand, transitions from a restricted import into an appreciating financial investment. By flawlessly leveraging that 25-year loophole, you secure a vehicle that can now be legally titled, registered, and driven on public roads. You totally bypass the restrictive standard regulations. And because you bought it in Japan before U.S. buyers could legally touch it, you got in at the absolute ground floor. Once it lands stateside and clears customs, U.S. market demand drives the price up immediately. It's no longer just a cool import. It's a lucrative, appreciating, mobile asset sitting right in your garage, gaining value simply by existing in a new market.
And here's the thing to remember. The 25-year window isn't a static date. It's constantly moving forward, month by month, year by year. Right now, as we speak, a whole new batch of vehicles from the late 90s and early 2000s are quietly reaching their 25th birthday, shifting from strictly off-limits to completely open season. So I want to leave you with this final thought, and I encourage you to look at the market through this new lens. As that horizon constantly moves forward, what iconic vehicle is sitting undervalued right now in an overseas auction, just waiting to become tomorrow's greatest mobile asset? The clock is ticking, the math is remarkably clear. And for those who truly understand the mechanics of this loophole, the next big opportunity is already out there. Thanks for joining me on this explainer.